What's up, guys? Who wants to go down the rabbit hole? That's where we're headed today. I appreciate every one of you tuning in and being a part of this channel. We're pumping out a ton of content if you guys haven't seen. I'm trying to grow this thing, trying to reach the next level. I feel like we put a pretty good product out there. I feel like I'm doing a lot of good research. If you guys don't mind liking the video, subscribing to the channel, turning on the notifications, sharing this with your friends, it means a lot to me. This will be one that you're glad that we did, because once DeMarcus Walker got cut, it's clear the Bears need to pick up a couple defensive ends, just the way it is. When you look at the depth chart, we've got Montez Sweat and we've got Austin Booker, and that's it. That is literally it. I mean, we got Dominique Robinson. What are we going to do with him? I don't think we'll cut him before camp starts. He'll be on the 90-man roster because he's a $1.1 million contract. You're going to bring a bunch of those league minimum contracts in to be able to compete at camp. I don't think you'll get rid of him before then, and he fits the size mold of a Dennis Allen type defensive end. They'll see what they can do with him, but they need to bring in some more. And if you're going to cut DeMarcus Walker, who is a serviceable, that's probably the best word that I can find for him, serviceable edge, they could come in, he could play some interior as well, playing the 5 gap, 3 gap if needed, but not likely, 5 gap, 7 gap, 9 gap. He's able to play many positions there. Decent against the run, didn't generate enough pressure, and really that was his downfall and the reason you want to get rid of him and upgrade the position. Just a little bit of a lackluster tackling year. His pressure was not there, only 39 pressures on 415 pass rush opportunities. His PRP, the PFF grade for pressures, and his win rate were just low, too low. So that $5.5 or $5.25 million was a little bit too valuable to the Bears. You see, we have dead cap of $666,000, 2/3 of a million, and we saved $5.25 million. So onward and upward, what are we going to do? Well, when you listen to everybody, when you listen to the pundits, when you listen to all the different Bears channels, when you listen to everyone talk, well, we're obviously going to bring in Chase Young, or we're going to bring in Josh Sweat, or we're going to bring in a big name, a Khalil Mack, right? I mean, that's the only logical thing that makes sense. If you cut a mid-tier guy like DeMarcus Walker, you have to bring in a big name to replace him. That's not necessarily true. Just because we cut DeMarcus Walker, it might be for one of many reasons, like his pressure rate being extremely low, his tackling being low. We could cut him and replace him with someone around the same value of contract, $5 million, $6 million, $7 million, $8 million, with the ability to draft a high defensive end in this class, because as we know, this class is special. I mean, there's 20 defensive ends that are projected to go in the first 3 rounds, which normally there's, maybe 10-ish, if that. Last year, Austin Booker was a stretch in the 3rd round, and that's, like number 9 or 10 off the board. Ended up going to the 5th round. This year's defensive end class is notably one of the best defensive end classes in a long time. So it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to go after a big name, a Chase Young, because that's going to cost you 15, 17, and he's got injury history too. Well, Josh Sweat doesn't, but he's still going to cost you money. Khalil Mack, obviously we want to bring the Mack back, right, baby? We want to bring the Mack back to where he belongs, in the hometown. Well, that's going to cost you $20 million plus. When we have $76 million in cap space and everyone wants to fix the offensive line, and Drew Dahlman's going to cost you $12, $13, $14 million. Bad habits there. Trey Smith is going to cost you 21, 22, 23. And that's why you get everybody talking about, well, we can restructure contracts, and we can easily restructure DJ Moore and Cole Kmet and Jalen Johnson. There's 4 or 5 contracts we can restructure. Well, that's true, but are we in that position? Are we one player away? Are we in the playoff window right now? Are we going to make the playoffs this year? Those are things fans think are obvious. But when it comes down to it, you got to open that window up by winning. You got to win first before you start doing that, before you start restructuring these contracts and pushing out the dead cap to later, because then it's going to catch up to you. Yes, the salary cap goes up every year until you can't predict something like a COVID year happening, and then it does dip for a year, and then you have to pinch the pennies for a year. But if you strategically plan the way Ryan Poles has, to where he only has about $4 million in dead cap now, and that's after he cut 2 players, then you have a position to continue to grow, build through the draft, and build through proper free agent signings. So One of the things I wanted to do today is examine some of the names that aren't being thrown out there by all your. I mean, it's easy to look at the natural names. It's easy to look at the obvious names, right? We did it on here. As soon as we cut Marcus Walker, I put this post up here on the cut video where we cut him. I explained how much cap we had and what our moves were probably going to be. Probably sign someone like Khalil Mack for $22 million a year, or Josh Sweat for $18 million a year, or Chase Young for $17.5 million a year. And these are just projections from PFF. This is what they have them ranked overall free agent, 5th overall for Khalil Mack, 10th overall for Josh Sweat, 49th for Chase Young. And they say they'll probably go for around this 22, 18, 17. Well, if we're going to truly focus on rebuilding the offensive line through free agency, because this is such a special defensive line class at edge and defensive tackle, that you want to use that first rounder on one of these elite edges or defensive tackles like Walter Nolan or James Pierce or Kenneth Grant, or, I mean, on and on and on. Probably half of the first round is going to be defensive tackle or defensive ends being taken. That's how good this defensive class is. And you got I didn't even put Abdul Carter on here because he's probably going to go first overall, or at least top 3 overall. But you see here, defensive ends, James Pierce, Mikael Williams, Landon Jackson, Shamar Stewart, Mike Green, Jack Sawyer, Nick Scourton, Princely Uman, among others. There are even others. So if you're going to draft one of them, does it really make sense to sign a big free agent here when that takes away from the cap from the offensive line? I don't know. I don't know what the Bears are going to do. But I do know if you sign a Chase Young for 17 or Khalil Mack for 22, it's not possible to get both Drew Dalman and Trey Smith. You can't do both of those things because you still need to fill out 20 more roster spots at league minimum contracts, and you'll still be over the cap. So then you have to restructure. I just don't think that's what Ryan Poles is going to do. I don't think that's his MO. I could be wrong. But I think there's a more logical path and avenue that he's typically taking that would be the path he would go down. So I'm going to show here, and I'm going to show a couple mid-level free agent signings to where possibly the Bears are going to sign a middle-level free agent that could fill in at defensive end better than DeMarcus Walker would. So we're saying there's a better free agent out there than there would be DeMarcus Walker with his weak tackling year and his low pressure rates. A worse year than he had last year. 2023 was a better year than he had in 2024. So we're going to save that $5.5 million. What if there's someone we could sign for around the same value and then still draft a high-level free or rookie in the draft that maybe starts over them, but we have a better value contract there for someone to rotate in Dennis Allen's defense? Just a thought for me. Dominic Robinson, Zach Pickens still here, but to me, they're more depth pieces that will compete in camp and aren't guaranteed a spot. So there's many holes we need to fill here on the defensive line between a starting edge, starting nose tackle, backup 3-tech, and a backup defensive end as well. Well, let's jump right into the options that I see as viable fits, which I researched all the available free agents, and I think these are the best fits for us. And number one, look right here at the bottom. I think it's easy to overlook the players we had on this team. But Darrell Taylor, Jacob Martin, and Daniel Hardy are all viable options to bring back to the Bears roster. One of the biggest things with all three of these guys is they had good measurables at different areas throughout the season, and the same with Dominic Robinson. He actually played really well in certain aspects of certain games. His pressure rate was really high for a couple of them, but they just weren't getting the reps. DeMarcus Walker was in the way this last year. Is that the key reason the Bears went ahead and cut DeMarcus Walker and said, okay, we're going to move in another direction? Because they see a viable option in one of these three, say Darrell Taylor. Remember, we traded a draft pick to bring Darrell Taylor in. The Bears could still be very high on Darrell Taylor and say, we want to bring him in to be a solid either backup or starter, maybe starter to start the year while you have a James Pierce coming in on third downs, on pass rush opportunity sets that are, pure pass rush sets, and bring him in and have him rotate in that way. But you can start Darrell Taylor this year when he had very good metrics, but just in limited action this year. Or maybe the Bears are high on Jacob Martin with the high pressure rates that he got. Or maybe with our exclusive right free agent, that's what this blue means. So he only has 2 years of service in the league. It's 2 or 3, and you can still make them an exclusive right free agent. Same here with Jonathan Ford. Exclusive right free agent. So the Bears can sign Daniel Hardy to a league minimum contract. I'm almost going to guarantee they'll do that anyways, because you bring him into cap. That's the same type of thing as Dominic Robinson and Zach Pickens. You're getting a league minimum contract, which, by the way, just for knowledge sake, exclusive right free agents, none of that money is guaranteed. So if you bring Daniel Hardy back for a 90-man roster, there is no harm, no foul in that. Same with Jonathan Ford. I would expect all of our exclusive right free agents to be re-signed because they're all good ones. These two, Bill Murray, bring them back. There's no reason not to. Exercise that option. Bring them into camp. If they don't work out, cut them when you do 90-man roster cut downs to the 53-man roster. But Daniel Hardy, if you remember, was last year's preseason champion. He was the guy who was in on every play, a lot of hustle, special teams. I mean, really, there's a lot of upside to Daniel Hardy still. He's still got a lot of ball left to play. Only has, consideration for his service time in the 2022 and 2024 seasons where he got actual reps. So we'll actually take me off screen here, and we'll show you the 3 options from the Bears. And then I'm going to show you 6 other options from around the league that I researched that I think could be in the same boat, but maybe we have our own hometown talent right here, but we like to hype up, the Khalil Macks and the Josh Sweats because it's fun and exciting. That's what this time of year is, the offseason. We have a lot to look forward to, but does it really fit the best avenue for the Bears? Well, yeah, we want all the home runs, right? We want every best player on the team. We want to make this team an all-star roster. But I think a lot of people lose track of the salary cap. That's why you guys tune into this channel. I give you a realistic look at where the salary cap is, what options we have, where we move from here, and what every implication of signing players means. So with these 3 guys, as I said just a second ago, I know that's really small, guys, so I'll just read it to you. This is the collective bargaining agreement for 2020 through 2030, which is what they're under right now. And you look at the service time for 0 years, 1 year, 2 year. So if you're a restricted free agent, this is the minimum you're going to make here, just over $800,000. That's why some people are projecting Daniel Hardy and other players to be $800,000 as a league minimum contract, but it's not realistic to their service time. So Daniel Hardy has 2 years of service, so he would be a $1.03 million contract. Now, I've said that in other videos when I'm doing, Bill Murray, and I say how much his contract will be. Well, this is the basis and the explanation for it for knowledge sake. Take this for what it is. 2 years of service time, that $1.03 million is the league minimum contract that he would garner. You look at his overall defensive grade, it's actually extremely high, 70.8. But he only had 22 total pass rush snaps. It's somewhere around 30 total snaps. 9.5 PRP is very solid. When you're nearing that 10, that's PFF's grade for pass rushing. That's a pressure every 5.5 plays. That's very, very high. So in the 22 pass rush snaps he had 4 pressures. 0 sacks, though, and only a 4.8 pass rush win rate. And what that means is the pressures that he was getting. So when you have someone with this low of a pass rush win rate, but a very extremely good pressure rate once every 5.5 plays, that means he was getting the lowest variety. There's a sack, a hit, and a hurry. He was basically just hurrying the quarterback. He didn't get any hits, didn't get any sacks. So there's room to grow there because his moves are good. He's getting in. He's getting some pressure. Limited opportunity and reps. Definitely need to bring Daniel Hardy back. Is he what we're planning on replacing DeMarcus Walker with? I highly doubt it at this point. I doubt that he would be the reason we let go of DeMarcus Walker, but I would expect us to re-sign Daniel Hardy because he's on an exclusive right contract. Now we look at the other 2. Jacob Martin, who was a late addition last year as a free agent. We signed him just before the camp began. And I was very excited about it because the pressure he does get is pretty high. Now, in the season, he played 126 pass rush snaps. He had an 8.4 PRP, which is still very solid. Pressure every 7.3 plays, which is above average. And an 11.8% pass rush win rate. That's good as well. 3 sacks and 123 opportunities, not bad at all. That's actually really good. So his pass rush grade, 67. Overall grade, 63. So it's fine. But maybe the Bears see within him something that they can continue to develop and they want to work with him. You see here PFF, this is Spotrac, has him estimated to be a $2.2 million average annual salary. Now, when they're at this lower rate, I don't take credence to this being very exact, but I would say all these guys are going to be, between $2 and $5 million contracts, and I would expect it to be around there. The other one, Darrell Taylor, obviously we liked him because we traded for him. When it didn't work out with Matthew Judon, the Bears pivoted, and they went ahead and traded the Seahawks for Darrell Taylor. Traded a late round pick, a late day 3 pick for Darrell Taylor. He had 225 pass rush snaps, 7.8 PRP, still solid. Not nearly as good as Jacob Martin, but still solid. Overall, his pass rush grade was better, though. He got more hits and the equal amount of sacks. His pass rush win rate about the same. Both of these guys actually look really good on paper. If I'm looking at both of these guys and I'm analyzing who I would want as a free agent, I'm actually saying if they weren't on the Bears before, I'd be looking at both of these guys and saying, yeah, I wouldn't mind if the Bears took a shot on either one of these guys. I would love for them to bring them in. Do I want them to be a starter? Probably not, but I would love the opportunity to see how they can develop and see if they can get some solid reps. Now, if one of these guys are the reason that we let DeMarcus Walker go and we want to retain, say, Darrell Taylor or Jacob Martin, I would hope they would be the backup behind Montez Sweat and we draft someone very high in this draft. Jamar Stewart, James Pierce, Mikael Williams, someone very high at the top of the draft that is going to get those starter reps. Whoever you draft at 10 is going to be a starter for this team. So that would be my hope if we go down this avenue path. I just am not convinced and sold we're going to spend heavy on the defensive front when we already have Montez Sweat in that position. But who knows what the Bears are going to do. But these are some solid options from the Bears. All right, so let's keep down this path. Let's say we don't go after a Josh Sweat, a Khalil Mack, a high-value player, and we're looking for that starter to be our 10th overall pick, or maybe even 39th overall pick. Maybe we go, Walter Nolan at 10 and what's his name from Ohio State, who freaking won the national championship. I can't think of his name right now. The two of them, not JT Tuilamola, but Jack, Braveheart, sorry. But we get someone, or Landon Jackson, we get someone high value that would start on the opposite side of Montez Sweat, and then we have another really solid backup guy, along with Austin Booker. The two of them rotate in with Montez Sweat and with our rookie. Well, here's some good options for you guys to consider. And yeah, I know underneath me, Calais Campbell is not a defensive end. He has played defensive end before. But I just want to show another option here of what they could be looking at with low-value contracts. Bring someone in who rotates from defensive tackle to defensive end. Someone like DeMarcus Walker who can rotate between both, come in at the 5 slot, 7 slot, 9 slot, and be able to play both of those roles. And he had the best, number 1 out of all defensive interior for run defensive grades. So there's another good option. I brought him up a couple times, and I'll give you one more here at the end for defensive tackle positions, because if you're not going to spend huge on one defensive end, maybe you get 2 mid-level guys, Calais Campbell and Joseph Asai, or Darrell Taylor. Maybe you get 2 of these guys in the interior and then draft a Walter Nolan and draft a Princely Uman Mielen. Draft one of each. And, it's just, there's so many options here, and that leaves enough cap space for the Bears to go after and pursue a really solid starting offensive line and then draft guys behind to develop. There's so many good options there with going with these mid-level contracts. I'm really sold on this concept. But let me point out 2 guys here. Now, none of their stats blow you away. And I scoured through hours and hours of stats and breakdowns of different players that are free agents to find these quality guys. And I do like both of these guys. Joseph Asai might not pop on paper here, but it's 5 sacks. It's notable. Those 5 sacks all happened in the last 6 games of the season. So he came on strong at the end of the year. Now, compared to Darrell Taylor and Jake Martin, these stats aren't anything compared to them. Jake Martin and Darrell Taylor, both their reps, their PRP, their pass rush win rate, their pressure per play, actually some of the best. Not just out of the free agents, but of those players that played last year in limited snaps. So, top 50, top 40. And when you're rotating 3 or 4 defensive ends, defensive interiors per game, that's actually pretty high. So, talking myself into it, guys, and maybe you guys are getting convinced as well that it's possible. I think we might be going for some of that same talent we had on the roster. It's just a matter of Dennis Allen coming in and evaluating those guys and seeing, and then, before free agency hits, do we extend an offer to a couple of these guys? I don't know. We'll find out. But Joseph Asai, sorry about that, moving that whole thing off screen. 349 pass rush snaps, 5.6 PRP, which is relatively low. Pressure every 11.3 plays is not the best, but again, as I said, came on really strong at the end of the year. 9.3 pass rush win rate. You don't want that below 10. But 2.3 million, 6'4", 263 pounds, a lot of capability, a lot of potential. It's a good word, especially the way that last year ended. I would see the Bengals signing him more than anything. Dante Fowler followed to the Commanders last year and ended up having a really good season. Those 11 sacks are going to be appealing for some team. None of these pop off the page, though, but he capitalized on the pressures that he did get, one every 7.8 plays. A lot of them ended up in sacks, so could be a good option. These are a couple of guys worth looking into and potential for the Bears to fill that mid-level contract role, this $5, $6, $7 million type of contract. These are a couple guys you could be looking at for that, and I like both of the options. I don't necessarily love them as starters, but to be able to have to rotate with Montez Sweat, with a rookie, maybe Austin Booker rotates behind Montez Sweat, and then a rookie starts that we pick 10th overall, James Pierce. I've gone through many names already, but one of those rookies, and then Dante Fowler behind him, I actually like the concept of that. And then just a couple more to point out here. Both of these guys were guys we talked about last year. Now, obviously in Hard Knocks, we learned about Matthew Judon and the Bears trying to trade for him. That didn't end up panning out. And of course, we pivoted, we rotated, and we went and traded for Darrell Taylor. Now, by all things considered, Darrell Taylor was the better. We paid less to get him, a late third round pick, and he performed significantly better than Matthew Judon. Now, similar systems from Atlanta to from New England to Atlanta, so it's not a system change that was the big thing. Sometimes it's hard to switch teams. I get that, but you look at the significant drop-off. These greens, light yellows, good years. Green looked like he's getting to get a big contract extension. The Patriots said, no, we'd rather trade you. You do your holdout. You play your games, and we'll end up trading you. They ended up trading him to Atlanta. He chose Atlanta, and he had a relatively rough year. Did get 6 sacks, but only 1 pressure every 13.1 plays, which is pretty low. 6.2 pass rush win rate, which is low. 5.0 PRP, which is low. So none of this screamed off tape. Now, we talked about both of these guys last year. Carl Lawson went to the Cowboys, had a decent season. Nothing special, but kind of in line with where he was before. Kind of thought he might take a step up, though. 29 years old, 32 years old. I don't think the Bears will pursue this path, either of these guys this year. But you do have to remember, Ryan Poles did like Matthew Judon last year, and he did try to trade for him, but I don't think he wanted to pay the extension amount that Matthew Judon wanted. Now, for all those that are keeping tally of the bad Ryan Poles, good Ryan Poles, in the hate club and the fan club, this has to go down as a check mark in the right direction for Ryan Poles, because he wasn't willing to overspend on a player that he didn't believe had earned that contract yet. Now Matthew Judon hasn't earned that contract, and he's probably going to take a pay cut this year, somewhere around $4, $5, $6 million a year, when he wanted, I think, I'm trying to go off memory, I think he was saying he wanted 15 to 20 million a year. And that's not happening after this year, and I don't think the Bears will pay that, and I don't think anybody else will pay that. So, $5, $6, $7 million might be right in range with where he is. I'd rather take a shot on Carl Lawson with his year. It was more consistent with him. Pressure rate was better. Pass rush win rate was better. Pressure every 10.8 plays. But I just like, from the other options, when you compare that to these Bears players, there's just so much more untapped potential here. And I just think both of these options, Darrell Taylor and Jacob Martin, if we're going to go this mid-level free agency to be able to capitalize on the extensive spending, I'm getting on board with the spending spree on the offensive line. Go big, go hard, spend big on the offensive line. But it's going to take something like this, maybe going after Jacob Martin or Darrell Taylor, $2, $3, $4, $5, $6 million contract, the same that we cut DeMarcus Walker for, And then signing someone like a Jaron Reed, who had a huge year on the defensive interior, who had a huge year for the Seahawks, somewhere around $6, $7, $8, $9 million a year. By everything considered, 21st out of 118 defensive interior last year. He had a good year for the Seahawks. So is it more likely to be able to pull someone like him or a Levi Onwuzurike away? I almost put Levi Onwuzurike because those who follow this channel know I put a lot of prep into Levi last year, and I wanted him to come to the Bears. But the Lions are more of a contender. They already, they had a significant run. Many people felt like they would go to the Super Bowl. They had a shot at winning the Super Bowl. Jaron Reed was with the Seahawks. It's easier to pull someone away from the Seahawks than it would be, but he's 32 years old. Oh, man. So anyways, but that's what it would take, is taking a couple of these mid-level contracts in that type of scenario. So I know this isn't the sexy take, guys. I know this isn't your, for clicks take, but I really think with these guys both behind DeMarcus Walker last year, Darrell Taylor and Jacob Martin not getting as many reps as DeMarcus Walker, and DeMarcus Walker playing such a lower level, and these guys needing more reps, man, it just makes me wonder about how Eric Washington saw this situation, whether these guys got enough reps, and I think it might be the answer to be able to re-sign Darrell Taylor or Jacob Martin and have them have an opportunity to be that, defensive end 3, defensive end 4, however you label it, and have them be a big part of this next upcoming year. So it's kind of where my head is headed towards with these guys. I think it might just be to re-sign some of these the ones that we had last year, some players that were already on the Bears roster, probably Darrell Taylor, to be honest with you, maybe even Jake Martin, maybe even both. It could be both of them, and then still draft a defensive end in this draft. And I would expect us to exercise the exclusive right free agent option on Daniel Hardy as well. But let me know what you guys think. If I'm way off on my thinking on this one, if it's a more realistic take than what you're hearing out there, definitely not making this video for the clicks, for, just trying to make it sexy and just getting the clickbait stuff. This is really the logical thinking I go through. What could the Bears be doing in this situation? Is Ryan Poles trying to exercise some caution in certain areas, some calculated risk in other areas? And is he going to go all in on that offensive line? To do so would mean to get some mid-level signings in other places. So I won't be upset one bit if this is the path we go here, as long as we sign, or as we draft a defensive end in one of those first 3 picks at 10, at 39, or at 41. That would be my take on it. So let me know what you guys think. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you haven't hit the like button by now, please do so. If you haven't subscribed, I appreciate you doing so. If you do that, I have some good content coming out, and I'm pumping it right now, guys. So please help support the channel. Until next time, I do appreciate you guys. Bear down, and da Bears.